So we were talking about True Blood. So you said Alan Ball approached you?
Well, no, I went in and auditioned for it, and I read the character, the mayor, and I know he was from Louisiana, so I tried to get that kind of Louisiana speech going, and he said, "Oh, that was wonderful." He says, "I'm from down there," and he says, "That's just right." He says, "Terrific, okay." And so I went to work, and then the first day we had a reading around the table. I worked on it 2 days that time, and the second time we had a full table read, and as he came in, he passed by me and he said, "I'm so glad you're here." He says, "I've been wanting to work with you for years." I said, "Well, I'm here. I'm available." I didn't say anything. I thanked him. So, but that's the whole story, because then I went back maybe once or twice, but the character is not very important. He really isn't. He usually has one line or two, something like that. It's just kind of fun to be part of such an exotic show.
Yeah, it's a little different than Patty Duke.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned this earlier, but just to talk a little bit more in detail about Bag of Bones.
Oh, yeah.
Can you describe the premise of that?
Yeah. Well, the premise for me was that I was this old son of a bitch who owned the town. He'd controlled everything in the town. Well, I can't remember his name right now, but it doesn't matter because everybody knows me. And he didn't have a southern accent, though. I'm just trying to remember, there's a key line, and once I've said it, then it'll tell you everything I did with the character. I love working on it because I worked with a very good actor, Pierce Brosnan. Just a wonderful, he's really a good actor. I had a lot of time to watch him because I'd be in scenes with him where I didn't have much to do. He's right on top of everything. Just wonderful, and a sweet guy, really nice. And most of the other people were from Canada, and they were all fine, you know. But and I guess I was okay, but I fell while I was up there and cracked another vertebrae. I'd already cracked 4 of them before I went, and I have to wear these because I have peripheral neuropathy. So I was not, but fortunately I was, well, what's his name, who wrote it, you know?
Stephen King?
Stephen King, what's his name, who wrote it. Stephen King had said I was the one he wanted to play the part. I didn't realize that he knew my work or anything like that. I guess maybe he watches television once in a while, but anyway, so I, and the character is written to be in a wheelchair, a very elaborate wheelchair. And so it was fine, I could work in a wheelchair. And there were some of the places that it went where I could not have gotten because it was so steep when we were looking down at the lake. And there was a wonderful guy who was a paramedic up there. He was just a terrific person. And he took a great liking to me, and he loved my work, apparently. And so he kind of made it his special job to take care of me. And he could pick me up and carry me, or he'd get his guys over, and they'd all pick my wheelchair up, and when I'd get to a tough place, we'd go staggering down there, and I'd feel completely safe. Terry was his name. Really just a wonderful guy. Anyway, so the character was just kind of crazy, you know. The last time I appear in the movie, the last scene I had in the movie, which had this key line in it, I was in a bathtub under the water, and I came out of the water and yelled at custody has its obligations. The line was that. And so I had tried that out with my granddaughter, the one I think could be an actress. And when she saw the picture, she said, "But you were so mean." She didn't like it at all, and I was that mean. I said, "Well, honey, I showed you what I was going to do." Anyway, so, but so he was fun to play, kind of.
Is it interesting to get to step out, at this point in your career, to get to step out of the kind of nice guy
Yeah,
characters.
sure. Well, I've played a couple of. I can do curmudgeons pretty well, and when I get a chance, I worked on Trouble with Jim or something anyway with
According to Jim? With
According to
Belushi?
Jim, yeah, a really good actor and a good company too, and yeah, I played a guy, a widower whose wife had lost some jewelry. He had some jewelry that had belonged to his wife, and they'd gotten it back. I don't know. Anyway, he was really nasty though about everything. So it was fun to do that. You know, I'd just say no. He said, "Well, I don't care about it. Why do I care about my wife's jewelry, my dead wife's jewelry? That doesn't mean anything to me." That was the tone, and it suited me fine. I love to do that. You know, it's fun to play people like that.
That's excellent. So just a few questions to kind of sum up.
Okay.
To what do you attribute the longevity of your career?
Talent. No, I don't know. I can act, and I came along at a time when there was a lot of work. Not initially, but during the 50s, the work kept getting more and more because the guild signed a contract that allowed the producers to rerun shows, and they couldn't do that before. And suddenly they had it on film, and they didn't have to use the terrible copies of, I don't know what they called them, but they were really bad copies of live shows they would put on film.
Kinescopes?
Kinescopes? Well, kinescopes, but there was something else they did with them. They would shoot the live show on film, but it would be, you know, a television screen you were looking at, and they really weren't useful. And so they were not rerun. They almost never reran a live show. But with film, starting in 1952, we had a contract that allowed for payment of a small residual, the producers to rerun the films as many times as they wanted. And it used to be the limit was like 6 times and then gradually more. And eventually in perpetuity, but at a very small percentage. But what difference did it make? That was good. And it also enabled the producers to recoup a lot of money from themselves. So I was lucky to be working in that time because once that started, this town exploded with work. As I say, there were 105 series shooting here at the end of the 50s. Then after that, it declined somewhat, but there was still a lot of work. And then I got into voiceover work. And that's like a gimme, you know. You can't ask for anything easier or nicer than that. If you happen to be right for the work, you have to be lucky enough to have a voice they like. And maybe it helps that I had done a television series, and so they could sort of play off of that. And people thought, oh, well, they'll probably know who it is. So I don't know. That the way I've made a living was working a lot in television, doing a fair number of movies. I've done about 80, but I mean, ones where I had anything meaningful to do, maybe about 10. I worked for Joe Dante 3 or 4 times, and Joe I liked a lot. Anyway, he stuck me in Gremlins, but it didn't last. It was not a useful character. But anyway, so I got to work on a lot of interesting stuff at a time when the business was kind of booming here in Hollywood, and there was a lot of work for people to do. It's gotten much tougher. So I came along at the right time, and I was flexible. I was useful in a fairly wide variety of roles, and I could play straight, I could play character, and I taught myself how to do a lot of different accents and things like that, which was useful, but I enjoyed that. I loved that a lot, and get to play the Admiral. Not very often I got parts that I enjoyed as much as that. But, you know, all in all, and I did one of those guys with the Locust Valley Lockjaw. I did that on Maude, I think. And the result was that I got tied up on that Nancy Walker show, and so I lost the job with, I eventually did get to play Harry Hopkins, but that was a small bummer that resulted from my having gotten a job doing a funny accent. But, you know, along the way, the bumps and rises, but the main thing is I kept working.
What's one thing that you think your fans would be surprised to know about you?
That I'd rather spend my life working on the stage. I don't know. I would. I never got to do a Broadway show. That bothered me. The one time I worked in New York on the stage, I got an award. I got an Obie for playing the judge in the trial of the Catonsville Nine. But, you know, otherwise, what would my fans...
Be surprised to know about you?
That my first love was music, and that I really wanted to do that, and that I studied composing with Arnold Schoenberg. There are very few people around who can say that. And that he invited me to work in his, to study in his graduate seminar, mainly on the basis of having heard me play the piano when I was playing stuff that wasn't written for the piano, but I had adapted it in my own head for. So I don't know. They'd probably be surprised to hear that. Maybe they'd be surprised to know that I'm such a family man, because for me, everything has been about the home and the family and the kids.
That's nice.
So I don't know what they'd be surprised to hear, quite frankly.
What role do you think people remember you most or recognize you most from?
I wish it were the Admiral, but there aren't enough people who saw that. I imagine the Patty Duke's father, probably. That would be or maybe the latest thing I did that showed on television, you know. Well, maybe a lot of people will remember me from Star Trek because of that crazy guy I played, Nils Barris. God, I've gotten a lot of fan mail from that. So.
And what's your most memorable moment from that most memorable experience?
Well, the fact that I got to chew out Bill Shatner, but not really a whole lot, because it was a rather straightforward part. I was kind of a stuffy bureaucrat, not my favorite kind of role to play, except that there was some humor in it. So I don't know.
That's great. What do people say to you when they see you on the street? Do you get recognized, and what do your fans say? Hey, buddy, why are you taking so long to cross the street? No, I don't know. Yeah, people, if they recognize me, which they still do occasionally, but no, they don't stop me on the street, and they don't bother me, and they don't come up and say, "Can I have your autograph?" and things like that. There was a time where that might have happened, but I lived here in the Palisades all these years. Nobody ever invited me to be the mayor, which is one of the things that happens to actors who are here. So that's okay. I don't mind. Yeah. I'm getting the hiccups. That's why I'm behaving strangely. Just a couple more questions?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Go ahead.
What advice would you give to an aspiring actor?
Just make sure you need to act. It's not enough to like it. It's not enough to want it. It's got to satisfy a real need in you, because otherwise you won't be able to tolerate the bullshit, which you'll inevitably find. It'll just be too unpleasant for you. Too much rejection involved, and you can't be sensitive about that. It goes with the territory. So it has to satisfy something really deep inside you, and you know that this is it. So that's why I still go to class, for God's sakes. I'll be 90 in July, but and I learned from Milton too. I'm sorry he's dead, but I did learn some good stuff from him.
Yeah. What's your proudest achievement?
Oh, probably my family. I got a wonderful family. If it's professional, I think it's pretty good that I did all the performances I was supposed to do in a Broadway-style musical, Candide. Very difficult, hard to do, and Nancy Dussault and I were the two people who never missed a performance. Almost everybody else in the cast, and some of them not playing big parts either, had a vocal problem or something. Somehow, in spite of the fact that my voice is not anywhere near up to that standard, I still managed to do it and do them all. So I felt very proud. I was very proud to be in that and do it. I've liked the work I've done downtown there. There's one other thing I did down there. Gordon called me
Gordon Davidson called me one day at around 11 in the morning and said, listen, would you be willing to go on tonight in a play? Would you be willing to go on for Joe Flynn, who broke his ankle this morning, or broke his leg this morning? Kind of like that's one of the things, break a leg. He said, so he did. I said, well, what's the play? He says, oh, it's a brand new play. I said, oh, God, well, I don't know. Thinking, yes, of course I want to do it. I said, okay. I said, well, let me figure it out. Now, what do I have to wear? Because I'm not going to be able to get home. It's too far away. And he told me, so I said, well, I'll get my stuff together, and I'll be there in about 45 minutes. And I went downtown, and I met with him. And I went on that night, and it went pretty well. In fact, there were a couple of things I did that were funny enough that they got the biggest laughs in the show. There was one where this guy was drunk, and he was also a very uptight Catholic guy on a censorship board, but who also, it's called The Mind with a Dirty Man. And so Don Knotts used to do it. And so he had to go, he was in with a bunch of uptight Catholics. And so at the end of the play, he went kind of crazy, he got drunk, and he took off all his clothes except for, maybe he had a pair of shorts that he still had on. So I used to wear 2 pairs of shorts. I could take one off and throw that back in. And then I would come back in, and my son, Peter Strauss, came out and grabbed me and said, Dad, what are you doing? And before I went off, I carried the script the whole time when I did it. And I figured I better hold it loose leaf, just one act at a time. And I made that decision, and I also told him what to get me for supper. But when I went off stage to go out, and I left the script there downstage, and I went outside and threw my shorts back on, and then Peter Strauss came out, and he wrapped me in a blanket. And I came back in with him, and he said, Dad, why did you do that? And as I went for the script, I said, I'll tell you in a minute. And it got the biggest laugh in the show. And so I love doing something like that. That was fun. It was fun doing that, doing it cold off the top of your head like that. All the way through the show, I had a good time. And it was a big hit. The LA Critics Circle nominated me for the best performance of the year from it. Thank God I didn't get it, because I didn't deserve it. But it upset everybody downtown, I know. They couldn't get over the fact that they said, well, poor Joe Flynn and all of that. Poor Joe Flynn, he was fine.
What's your biggest regret?
Oh, God. Well, that I didn't get to work on Broadway. I really should have. But you had to be in New York to do that, And it was never worth my while to, even when I used to go back there and do voiceover work, I for the first 3 years before I went back and did the play back there, I had sort of prepared the field by going back and doing some voiceover work there so I could support myself. But I hated to be away from the family, for one thing, and I didn't want to change my whole life around, and I didn't want to stop coming out here and living the life that I like and staying in one-room apartment in New York by myself. None of that appealed to me. I didn't want to go on the road, for God's sake. I'd had a chance to do that early on, and I'd gone as far as San Francisco and then bailed out of a show. I did the cocktail party at that early on. But I don't know. I'd say working on Broadway.
All right. And then finally, what would you like to be remembered for?
Oh, God. I don't know. Well, I guess if they remember the Admiral, that'd be kind of fun. I really don't know. I've done a lot of public service work. I'm still a trustee of our pension and health plan, and of the Motion Picture and Television Fund, and I did my time in the Barrel as the president of the Guild, and I started I started the Committee for Performers with Disabilities. because I think that was an important step. It got them the same kind of coverage and protection that other things like racial, like non-discriminatory thing about people of different races, and all of the, I can't think of the terms anymore, but my brain is really fried. But all of that stuff, that's a lasting heritage. So anytime I see somebody with a disability on the stage, on camera, including the guy, David, who played on the procedural show, CSI, the first one. He was the coroner. Yeah, he'd been terribly burned, and he's done a lot of work. That's been ongoing. So I think I started something good there that I did. People urged me to do it, but I was in a position to do it when I was president, and I made sure it got done. So I think that's worth talking about, maybe. I don't know.
Well, it's all been worth talking about. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh,
it's been a real pleasure to speak with you, and we appreciate it at the Academy.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm honored that you would, first of all, that you would do it, and then that you would give me all this time. God, it just seems outrageous that I blabbermouth the way I did.
We could stay for hours. There's so much